Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is May 24th, 2024, and you are listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. And if it's every other Friday, that means it's like, all right, hold on, wait, what has the crew just said? And with me today, we have Beth and Andy, and I'm Brian. And this is our bi-weekly, although we did not do it 2 weeks ago because we had our 200th show. But this is our bi-weekly chance to just stop, breathe, not have to do a brand new topic, but actually have to have the opportunity to go backwards a little bit and talk about some of the topics we already talked about, but have new thoughts on. So we cover so much on this show, and we're always sort of like leaning forward. I mean, we're always like head tilted forward, feet trying to catch up with the head as we're running down the road. And sometimes it's nice to be able to stop with this particular show and go, okay, hold on a second. Lots has happened in the last 2 weeks. And as you were pointing out on our Slack channel, Beth, really like we could go 3 weeks, right? Because, we've had, we didn't do the particular show. So there's just so much to cover. I'm actually going to bring up your list on the side here, Beth. But man, we could dive into what I would love to talk about with you guys is like, now that we've had some time with like OpenAI's rollout, now that we've had some time with Google's Gemini and some of the things they have going on in the workspace and inside, building spreadsheets, building slideshows, all that stuff, and all the things Gemini can or can't do. Now that we've had some more time to play with, Anthropic's console, holy moly. I mean, on and on and on. And then all the other topics we have too. But I thought like it'd be fun to maybe just like get our pulse on, okay, now that we have a feel for what's actually usable today, not like some projected thing in the future, like what do we think? And I will tell you one that we definitely didn't cover. We talked about before OpenAI had their spring update or whatever they called it. There was two big predictions, and Carl was really talking about these a lot too. One, that OpenAI might announce a partnership with Apple. We still think that might happen, but we think it's going to be at Apple's dev day or whatever it is in June 10th, I believe it is, right? So we'll have to wait a little bit longer for that. The second thing was that a lot of people were predicting was search, meaning that ChatGPT was going to come out with, or OpenAI was going to come out with their own new search bot. Well, here's an interesting thing. I think they did, even though they did not announce it. It never came up in the thing. Sam Altman went as far as to say not GPT-5 or search, I think, in one of his tweets that he put out. But here's the thing. If you go into ChatGPT now, just yesterday, I could only get this in my Teams account for my work. So anything associated with Scale that we had a Teams account. Today, I can get it in my normal account that's not associated, a paid account that's not associated. But I could also get it in my daughter's free account, which means it's definitely rolling out. And here's what it is. Instead of just your browse and what you would usually get back from browse, which is fine. It would go search the internet and bring stuff back. Now it says searching the web at the top. It immediately shows you the 3 to 5 different cited sources, very similar to Microsoft Bing Chat, which would make total sense, right? We know this was going to be powered by Microsoft potentially. And then the result you get now looks like something out of Perplexity. To me. So here's the difference, right? If I just said, who won the game last night? Browse could do that. But now what I don't believe it could do in the past, or at least I never got the experience was now if you say something like, explain to me the pros and cons of NVIDIA's latest announcement about their stock price, which just came out yesterday. It cites sources. It gives a really well-balanced thought process to it. It's now that it feels to me like it's embedding the best of ChatGPT with recent news stories, but in intertwining them a la Perplexity, honestly. Now, I don't want to say it's better than Perplexity. I haven't had enough time with it. But have you guys had any chance to see that or mess with that at all? Because I think it is their chatbot.
No, you're the first I've heard talk about it, but I saw what you posted on Slack yesterday. And I think we know it's coming, right? Like it was that kind of like rumor, not rumor, too many people talking about it for it
Yeah.
to not be happening. And then, we just don't know when. And I think when he said not search, not GPT-5, I think that specifically mentioned calm down what we're talking about. What Mira is talking about on that day
Right.
was not going to be those two things. It was going to be for Omni.
So, what it wasn't was a landing page. There is no landing page of like Google search, right? You go to Google and you could do a search. And so I think people were expecting maybe that part of it too. Like, oh, you'll go to OpenAI and they will now have a search bar. Maybe that is still coming. I don't know. But this definitely makes sense. And I'm curious, Andy, if you have any take on, will this bite into somebody like a Perplexity?
Well, I think what's really happening is that OpenAI is wanting to reach parity with Google Gemini by integrating a pretty massive index, but it's questionable whether they actually have the infrastructure outside of a partnership to do the level of indexing of the global web that Google's already accomplished and perfected over many, many years. So right now, in one of the things that I notice that's really nice is Gemini is finding its way into all of the ways that I intersect with Google, and it's popping up there on the right and offering some interesting things. My use of OpenAI has typically been for a longer form question. And, then it'll give me a response, but it's not completely up to date. It doesn't really do previous to yesterday, apparently, doesn't really do the comprehensive search and summarization and sort of, examination of the various facets of the question or the query that you're posing. I think that's going to emerge for OpenAI. And OpenAI is hoping that instead of going to a Google search bar and getting what we used to call SGE, but is now being much more smoothly integrated as Gemini, instead of going there, you might just choose to talk to ChatGPT about it and get a similar kind of result. But it'll be an interesting comparison to see whether the search capabilities of OpenAI are actually at parity with what Google can provide, especially in respect of local search.
And the only one I think that can play ball there is Microsoft. And that appears to be what they've done, is that, if you were to look at two powerhouses of search, is Google better than Microsoft? I mean, as much as none of us were, I don't say none of us, but a lot of us weren't using Explorer or Edge for many years. Where I would not have touched it. They were still there. They were still doing and creating and doing search and indexing and stuff. So yeah, maybe this is that, that partnership. Maybe we are seeing a little bit of that Microsoft power coming into a ChatGPT. I'll tell you also another example of why I believe this is in fact drastically different than browsing, is when I'm using custom GPTs that we have built for clients. And so I'm always testing on the back end. And my boss actually was giving a demo of one of them on a live thing yesterday. And I cringed for a second because he only gave like one URL for like this in depth. And normally I would say give 2 or 3, right? Because I want ChatGPT. I've learned with browsing that I wanted to go do some deep dive, right? And so giving it 2 or 3, an about us page is great. Oh my God, if I can get an investor page, that's amazing. If I'm trying to do research on a company, investor pages are gold, because it can really help you with personalized emails, right? If you're talking about what their plan is in their Q4, right? Whatever. Well, what I will say is watching Jake, my CEO, do it, he put in one URL and the answer back was considerably better than anything I've seen in the past. And I was like, ooh, it didn't just go. The problem in the past with browsing was if you wanted it to go look at scale.com, it will look at scale.com, not scale.com / about us, about company, whatever subpage, right? Or sub URLs. It will really sort of focus. That's not what I saw yesterday. He put in scale.com as an example just to go through this live demo. And it was like pop, 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 with 6 different cited sources. 5 of them were scaled and another one was Glassdoor. Like that's not the same browsing. So anyway, we
No.
can talk about other stuff too, but I will say this has been like, oh, and I have one other big announcement too for OpenAI. My daughter's free account now has access to
4.0?
the custom GPTs, the store.
Wow.
But I
How?
created a brand new
Because
account.
they have to log in. Got it.
I created a brand new free account today under a different email address, and it did not have it. So my daughter's account, which has been around for well over a year and a half, just got it today, this morning.
Okay.
It refreshed and it was there in the upper left corner. It said explore GPTs. So I said, ooh, let me see if every free account is. So I created a fresh brand new free account and it did not have it.
So that makes sense, because I am hearing from people that some of their custom GPTs are breaking because there is a function call, or there's something that is handled slightly differently when it moves to 4.0 versus using 4 as the model that is doing it. And maybe we'll say more about that when we know more about it. I was just hearing about it yesterday, so I don't have a ton more information.
I will testify to that, Congress, that in fact 4.0 broke several of my GPTs and had me banging my head against the desk, going, "Why me? Why doesn't this work? How could it be possible worse?"
Brian, did you see anything common about the ones that broke that you could like surmise what the conditions are? I haven't checked mine, so I don't know.
It was almost like it seemed like all of a sudden out of nowhere, ChatGPT got lazy. In fact, I just had a former client just say that to me. He goes, I had built him a custom GPT. And he's like, look at this result. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's not great. He's like, I think it's broken. And I was like, it wouldn't surprise me. Let me go back in. I'm going to go in for him and look at the instructions. Because he's right. It went from giving him pretty good, consistent results for months. And just in the last week, he reached out to me, and I haven't worked with him in several months. And he's like, hey, Brian, he's like, this thing you built for me, because he still has the link I built for him, instead of him having it on this side, which is fine. He's like, it's, can you take a look at it for me? And I guarantee you I'm going to go back into it. So the answer to your question, Andy, is like, is there one specific thing? No, but it took me down a really deep rabbit hole of, okay, I'm not a coder, but I felt like a coder in the last 2 weeks, which was to say, okay, hands up, everybody pause. What I've been doing up to this point as far as how to write custom GPT instructions comes from learning from Rachel Woods and the AI Exchange and courses there. And then me and Beth taught courses on those. And not to say that that's abandoned, by the way. I still use what we would call markdown method. However, Beth, you had shared a recent blog article from OpenAI talking about their new suggestions on prompting. And I started using those suggestions. In fact, what I did was I copied the page. I put it in a document. Then I used that document as a knowledge resource and started running all my old custom GPT instructions through it. And I was like, what's missing? And I will tell you one thing, Andy, that came up that's just maybe helpful to other people. They have a thing in there in the article about, I'll find the link for you guys in a second, triggers, and using the term trigger, and then what the action is to happen after it. And I found that was helpful for getting ChatGPT to say something specific, like in quotes, to the user. Hey, I'm going to do this. That's a standard I want no temperature, no creativity in that quote. I want you to say this to the user every single time they go through this process. And that trigger and result part of the way they broke it down fixed some things for me. I won't say it's the only thing I did, but it was definitely a step in the right direction. Now my custom GPTs are working better. Like my same boss came back and he's like, we're there on this one that we have called Help Me Book a Meeting with. He's like, it's 100%. It's like,
yay.
Yeah. And that was a long road to get there.
Yeah. All right. So, so there are, we're not going to just talk about OpenAI today, but there are two pieces. One is if you have a Mac and you have not downloaded the app, do it, because the ChatGPT app on Mac is really, really great. It's not, it's kind of like what Sam was talking about just having a conversation with his computer that could be knowledgeable. It's not that. You can use 4.0 in the app. It's not what they talked about, right? It's not that low latency 4.0 voice, because that is still rolling out. More on that in just a second. But it still feels faster than the phone and feels more robust than the phone, because I can have a conversation with the Mac app and then do something without having to like switch screens and do.
Here's a proviso about that, which is I have 3 Macs around here. None of them can use that app because you have to have Apple Silicon.
Oh, yes.
You have to have what?
You have to have a later version of the Mac, which uses Apple's own silicon chips called the M line, M1, M2, or M3.
Oh, okay. I had to upgrade my OS, but it is an M2. So
yeah.
All
so
right.
Mine are all Intel based Macs from like the 2017, 2018 era. So yeah. I can't use it. This is to my point yesterday. Man, I'm starting to think, do I have to buy a new Microsoft Plus PC to get these kinds of features? Or do I have to shell out for, a big MacBook Pro with an M3? So,
yeah.
I was just doing some quick research on that one just to see how far back. If anybody's curious, if they would be able to download this, it sounds like, well, you would probably know if you have an M1 chip. But if you're like, geez, when did I buy my Mac? I would say 2020, late 2020 or newer. You probably maybe have a shot at this. It sounds like.
So okay. The last OpenAI news. Everybody is super excited about this, but it turns out they did not try to make it sound as much like Scarlett Johansson as possible. Yeah. And in fact, the casting call for the voices was in May 2022, which was before the conversation of Sam reaching out. So we're not saying that he didn't also want Scarlett Johansson's voice, but Sky was not based on Scarlett Johansson, and it was not trying to be based on Scarlett Johansson. And they had a big cattle call. Lots of people came. They picked the voices that they wanted.
Well, here's the only pushback I'd put on that. And I don't know the answer, obviously. Maybe that's 1,000% true. Her came out on December 18th, 2013. It's 11 years old. Mm-hmm. So who's to say in this big old cattle call of getting voice actors that they didn't already know that they wanted to have one that sounded kind of similar? Even if it was people inside OpenAI would be like, it would be a joke if one of these sort of sounded like her. And now they want plausible deniability on the back end to say, whoa. We did this long before we reached out to Scarlett. But does that mean they didn't get an actress who sort of did sound like her? I don't know.
That may very well be true. When you hear the voices, when you hear her speak, when you hear Scarlett Johansson speak, and then the voice from her, and then Sky, they're actually not that similar.
I agree with that.
But also, like it was a movie about a talking computer, right? That had a very intimate relationship with this person. So it would be kind of ridiculous not to think that there was some influence. But I believe when Sam tweeted her, he was not like, "Ooh, we stole Scarlett Johansson and embedded it in this." It was like, "Oh no, we're coming closer to that reality." That is that. Maybe there is someone who had that brilliant idea, but it was not. They did not go out and try to find someone specifically and say, "We're looking for Scarlett Johansson like voices." It was a big cattle call before that conversation.
When we try to do a comparison of listening to this voice and listening to that voice, isn't there an AI for that? I mean, couldn't there be an AI that would say, look, I just listened to both of these recorded voices, and here are the distinctive differences between those two. And OpenAI ought to do that in order to prove that their Sky voice is not, embarrassingly similar to Scarlett's.
That's not there. I'm going to throw it out here. Andy with the $1 million idea. If you come up with this idea,
it's going to be useful going forward because there's going to be a lot of impersonation. Sure. Now, there's going to be parody type impersonators out there of voices of famous people, but you'll really want to know, and there should be a tool out there that can say, based on recordings live like here of my voice, And this recording here, that one seems to be done by AI that, is slightly different in some way.
Can we
So
call
I
it
will.
Georgia Eye with AI at the end instead of Georgia Eye? Can we?
Oh, we got a brand. We got $1 million idea.
We got to get the domain.
Two things for that. One, when you have a technology that can ascertain that, it is also a technology that can duplicate it. Right.
Yep. And
so once you have a technology that is the test, you also have the technology that is the thing you're testing for.
But couldn't you, Beth, real quick, couldn't you on that for music? I mean, I didn't even go to actors when you said entity. I was thinking music, and we just watched not too many months ago where Ed Sheeran was being sued, and he won, by the way, for thinking out loud of one of his songs. Excuse me. I feel like I just inhaled a bug or something. Like seriously.
Maybe it was the coffee from the thumbnail where like dripping coffee off your face.
Like out of nowhere. That's weird. What was my thought process? The bug got me. What I was going to say is the music industry, Ed Sheeran, and he won the case, but he was up on the stand saying, look, you can't copyright GCD. You can't copyright 3-chord country and rock and roll, right? And that was sort of his point to it. But anyway, what I was going to, Andy, is if there was an AI tool to assist in going really deep into the intricacies of not GCD, but tonation and strumming pattern and da-da-da-da-da-da, and all these things, and it could listen to two and say, no, that is to the human ear, sure, but there are many, many differences on how this was created versus this one. And maybe it's able to quickly, because it's AI, go and listen to, 300 versions of Ed Sheeran playing that live in his defense. And it go, no, look, we're using this tool and we don't believe that this is a out and out, copy of that particular thing.
On the subject of music, we've talked about that recently because of the emergence of Udio and Suno. Thank you. Yeah. Should be Sono, right? Shouldn't it be Sono? Anyway, I've suggested that one of the things that's possible with Udio and Suno. Yeah. I'll never get past that. Is that now I can create a song that's a personal expression, and I can send that song to somebody, and let that play for them.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take that a step further. I'm waiting for one of those companies to kind of marry up with a video avatar generator like HeyGen, and let me do a live video performance singing a song that maybe I didn't compose. Maybe it's another song entirely. It's a much simpler process. Let me take a famous song and now let me appear to perform that song with beautiful vocal qualities, right? Because I can't croak my way through those songs. But now with the tools of AI, I can appear, at least in a video, to be singing beautifully and expressively with my face features and everything else. Where is that? That's coming. I swear it's coming. It's not that it's another $1 million idea that we should pursue.
No, Microsoft has already taken the millions, I believe, because Microsoft published a paper a couple of weeks ago, again, in the age of AI. What is time? I believe it was 3 to 6 to 10 weeks ago. But there were all of those there were a bunch of still photos that you'd see, and then you'd see them singing or speaking, and they had expressive expression on their face and that kind of stuff. So I think that is possible.
In their voice. So they were voice cloned.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, that's only worth a couple of bucks then instead of $1 million.
So I would also like to pull from some of our viewers who were commenting. Don't Sleep on China got a lot of interaction in terms of people feeling a couple different ways about what we were talking about. The first is the use of the phrase surveillance camera felt really biased for people. And I think that's a fair criticism. One of the let's see. Loki KS said surveillance cameras are called security cameras in the West, right? So we have security cameras all over the place. They are also surveilling us primarily for speed, but who knows, right? So that was like a point. Non-competes, Nakatoa Zero Taku. Non-competes and code sovereignty were things that they were concerned about. And that is not just AI, right? Or not even just tech with China. That's a known thing back and forth. Copyrights are a little more fluid. And the last thing, AI-Metaverse-Plus was commenting on my saying that China is a very old country compared to the US, and therefore they must have a lot of content to put into their LLMs to train. And they were reminding me that a lot of historical records and literature were destroyed in the Cultural Revolution. Mm-hmm. So communist China is or the current China is relatively young in that context. They do, again, have a lot of camera footage because all Asian countries are very camera heavy, which is another thing that they were saying. And that Taiwan actually has a repository, I guess, of that historical literature. So it exists, but it's probably not being used to train the AIs that we were talking about that China is creating. So,
yeah, I want to follow on China. China, as you know, is subject to severe sanctions by Western countries led by the United States, which are intended to try to deny them access to the latest technology for AI and try to retard their progress there. But inadvertently, what the impact of that is it just focuses China on matching and superseding anything that they might acquire from the West. And I wanted to share with you something that just came up, which is China announced at Tsinghua University specifically developed a breakthrough photonic computer chip they're calling Axel for all analog chip combining electronics and light. And it's It uses photons, particles of light, instead of electrons to process and transmit information, enabling much faster computing speed and lower energy consumption. And it's being manufactured in China using an older a process that doesn't require the advanced lithography equipment that the latest GPUs do. Now, in terms of performance, that chip achieved a computing speed of 4.6 petaflops, okay, which is that's 3,000 times faster than an NVIDIA A100 GPU.
Yeah.
And it also consumed 1/4 millionth of the energy that the A100 has to consume. So it's ultra low energy, it's much faster, and they're building it, and they're not going to be distributing this to anything other than their sort of global, partners like Russia, I'm sure.
Right.
So we've created a monster here by trying to do this way, or maybe we're just responding to the monsters that have been created that are attempting to be domineering in the world. So that, and plus on top of that, Grok, by the way, GROQ, which is the company that developed a chipset that's combining special instructions that work with LLM specifically and advances the speed of processing inference on process. They've just turned to the markets looking for $300 million in investment. And so Grok is also one of these players on the chip acceleration front.
Right. I think I also saw a story about light chips, right? Like doing that. So I'm wondering if I saw the same China story or if there are other companies in the US.
Well, there are certainly other players out there who are working on photonics, but there is one limitation of the Axel chip, which is that it's unlike a GPU. It's not effectively programmable for sort of versatility and general purpose use. It has to be built for a specific application, but that's not a problem. You just keep knocking out these chips on this low-cost CMOS type development pipeline, and you have a thing that's working 5,000 times faster. So and we also talked on a show not long ago about Gigantor, which is a U.S. company that has developed a chip that is running a convolutional neural network on an ASIC. So an application-specific integrated circuit, which is an older technology for development and cheaper and so on. So there's lots of players out there that we've not finished the run to the full attainment of what the processing power is that can be applied to these. And that Excel accomplishment, I think, is really important with respect to the power consumption, because one of the things that is a criticism of AI generally is that it is not ecologically friendly because of the power requirements to run it.
And there's and the supply chain is complicated, right? It right now it all runs through Taiwan for the most part, regardless of what chip you get. Those are where the majority of chips are manufactured. And there is apparently a small area in North Carolina that has the perfect sand for silicon, and that's like, I mean, there's just like, when you get further into it, you're like, whoa, does anyone else see it's held together with Scotch tape? Like, wow. So if there's new, better, faster, cheaper, less energy intensive ideas, that sounds great.
That triggered a recollection of another development that's related to this sort of complex global supply chain for our technology, and that is lithium from fracking wastewater. So it turns out that when the petroleum companies are drilling into shale in order to frack, which is like pressing water down in there and letting the water push the gas up to retrieve natural gas from little bubble areas deep down into the earth, with possible earthquakes as a consequence. It turns out that the water that goes down there to displace the gas and relieve it actually leaches lithium from the soil and concentrates it in that water. And now some research firm and or academic thing, I can't remember the reference, has found that there's a very high concentration of lithium in that, out of that. And you could get about 30% of the US requirements for lithium, which is really important in batteries, obviously, from extracting the wastewater basically from the fracking process.
Wow. That's kind of impressive. Yeah, not the fracking, but the trying to get something better out of it, I'm sure. I want to pivot real quick. I know we sort of spent a lot of time on OpenAI, not necessarily for that, but one of our more popular shows was one 2-3 weeks ago called Sam Altman's new AGI predictions. So I don't want to talk about that again. What I actually want to do is bring up something that Aaron shared in our Slack channel, but it's about Elon Musk. I was going to do it. One show. Okay. So if you guys have been listening to the show, by now I routinely get the two names and I say one when I mean the other. But Elon Musk, let me get back to what I'm doing here. He was talking via webcam to a Viva Tech 2024 in Paris. And he said, probably none of us will have a job when discussing how AI will develop and grow. He has a way with words, right? If you want to do a job that's kind of a hobby, you can do the job, Musk said. But otherwise, AI and the robots will provide any goods and services that you want. He explained that for this scenario to work, there will have to be a universal high income, which I was like, universal? That sounds like something else, which I'm glad this article, credit to MSN for this article. Universal high income is a concept that envisions a society where AI reduces the cost of human labor, which would make basic needs affordable for everyone. And this is not to be confused with universal basic income, which is exactly what I was confusing it with, which refers to a government giving a certain amount of money to everyone, no matter what their income is. And he said there will be no shortage. This is Musk again saying there will be no shortage of goods or services, Musk said. And then one last thing I want to bring up to this is he said he added at the conference, my biggest hope is Mars. My biggest fear is AI, which is kind of a cool quote, actually. So I don't know what you guys think. I think like a lot of people, Elon Musk. I have nothing good or bad to say one way or the other. I think he is, in terms of visionaries, I don't know that many can compare to him based on the scale at which he has had influence, from everything from hyperloops to cars to Mars to space to all this, right? Or the Neuralink. I mean, when you look at what he's attached to, right? So, but he also sort of throws out some stuff, and he makes these bold predictions that often he does it with Tesla. He does it with other things. It's not just that, SpaceX as well, where they often are just, they're too soon, right? He'll say something's going to happen in the next 3 years, and it blows past that and ends up being 7, 8, 9 years away. So I don't know. What do you guys think about like him, saying something like that? Because it's a very matter of fact way, and that's the way, he speaks. But do you kind of, he's saying by 2025. I mean, let's be honest, that's next year. So what do you guys think in terms of this? Do you think he is just super bullish based on to contrast to the way Sam Altman was talking about AGI, which is to say, I've given up in trying to give a definition for AGI, because I think AGI can be a lot of things on a lot of different industries at a lot of different time points, if you were to plot it out. Because in some industries, you may say, yeah, that's AGI in that industry, but not if we go out to healthcare, then no, it's not there yet. So it'll roll out. Anyway, all that to say, what do you guys think about that? Does that change your perspective? Is this just another classic quote from him? What do you think?
In the long run, I agree with him. Mm-hmm. I think that, the developments of technology, will, and I'm talking about decades long, like the disruption and the transformation that's required to get to the point where humans really don't work as we understand it today anymore. I think that's going to take decades. There's so many things that can't be accomplished by robots and AI without, like years and years and decades of development. Just think about the food supply, as one. Like, you've got to automate everything from the tractors to the, seed development, all that stuff. That there's still going to be people having to work. But I think he raises an important point, which is, how do you get to the end game there without providing, in effect, more free access to resources to everybody in the population? Yeah. And that is a total disruption of what we understand as capitalism or even command economies. So, I agree with him, but I think he's way short on the timeline.
Yeah. What's the quote on that, Beth or Andy, on the we usually, oh man, I'm going to ruin this, overshoot the short and undershoot the long, or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like sort of like, man, I'm messing that up. But anyway, that's the idea of it, is that we often are too bullish on the short term and not bullish enough on the long term. Maybe that's a better way to say it. Sorry, go ahead, Beth.
I also, I did not spend a lot of time with the quote, but for me, the difference between resources being shared across need that is controlled by very, very rich people or very, very rich companies versus government is a bit alarming, because government is actually formed to be able to be representative or responsible to the people, and there's no way that a corporation or very wealthy individuals are like, that's just not how that happens. And if you come at me and say, look at our government, it is not serving our need, I would say that is because of the influence of very, very rich people and very, very rich companies. So they don't need to be responsive to us. But I don't think we fix that by saying, screw the government. Let's just let them decide anyway. Like, that's oh, you can come at me. Sorry.
No, I just put up, for anybody that's listening to this, I just put up a banner.
One quick addition here. Yeah, you mentioned VivaTech, which is a big AI conference in Paris, and
we have a foreign correspondent.
We dispatched our correspondent, Carl Ye, to be there in person. He's actually been sending us videos of some of the demonstrations on the stage there. And we'd love to share those with you. And perhaps we'll ask Carl when he comes back to do his final report on the trip to provide some clips that you'll enjoy.
You know what, Andy? That's not a half bad idea. Let's get with Carl and see if we can schedule a show for next week. Because I was just thinking about next week's topics. It'd be great to do a deep dive, like, have Carl kind of run us through all the cool stuff that came out of it. Because he has been sending us a lot, on the back slideshow, just talking about things that he's seeing, hearing, listening in the conference. And it's been really, really informative. As far as AI and stuff like that. So that'd be a cool idea for a show. Well, with that in mind, we could certainly keep going for twice as long. I want to give a shout out to my daughter Sophia, who brought water to the room. I literally thought I was going to just keep coughing through the rest of the show, and she's very sweet. And she was worried about me, so she brought me a huge glass of water, and it made a huge difference. So a nice assist to my daughter Sophia, who's home today and finishing up school. So we'll wrap it up there, but thanks for everybody hanging out with us. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Beth. And I love the show. I always look forward to this bi-weekly wrap up. We will be back all next week. Memorial Day is on Monday for anybody in the US, but we will have a show. We'll be here. So, I know the three of us said, I think we'll all be here, and then whoever else can show up as well. So come on back all next week. Come hang out with us. If you're off on Monday, while you're getting that grill prepared and ready in the morning, you can hang out with us live and talk about AI. So that's it for this week. It's been a good one. These last 2 weeks have been crazy. I am sure the next few weeks will be just as much. So we will be here to report on all of it and give you our take on it. So until then, guys, we'll see you. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday. Bye.